Hey, better late than never. Now, you won't see me today because I cannot work out how to get my camera to work. I think I've bumped something in transit when I was traveling yesterday. So, we just got the charts today, and that's what you guys are here for anyway, not for me. So, it's perfect. You can get to look at the charts. Now, I have a really croaky voice because I've been really sick with the flu. So if my voice drops in and out, I might need to end this stream, but or if I get a coughing fit, I apologize in advance. Yeah, so I'm here, I'm alive, but I had some type of flu while I was traveling in Brazil, and it was the worst thing ever. So I apologize for not being there last week, but I'm here, no camera, and I promise I'll get this camera working next week. But we're here and we're here for the charts, and yeah, come and say hello. Let me know what charts you would like me to look at in the comments here. I've got Robbie. Hi, how are you, Robbie? And I've had a few requests on Twitter or X, and I will get those to you. Now we are live here on YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and of course getting started in crypto. And we are live today because, hang on, let me see if I can get my banners to work. Nothing works today. So we're not having any banners today. So, but we are live for Femex and our free signals through Femex. So if you head to Getting Started in Crypto, click on the free signals page. You can get Femex free signals where we give you Femex scalp, long and short signals for a deposit of $1,000 into your account, which you can trade from. And that's pretty much all you have to do. And the rest is free. So, and G Signals has been killing it. So, yeah, let's get started and get completely into this. We don't need to see me today. And it's all about the charts. So, this is BTC. And this is a chart that I've had on Twitter, and it is literally broke down past the one, so that does mean more than likely we are going to two. We're stuck at a pivot at the moment, so this pivot is 115,000. It's an important pivot because this is a directional pivot, so not crossing this region does mean we are going down to two. So 2 is 110. That has been my target for a while for BTC. Regardless of whether we have a redirection heading up a little bit higher, maybe to 116, I still believe we will see 110 for BTC before we have the next part of this bull run. So there's still a lot of sell pressure on the markets at the moment, just due to the no rate cut, and literally the data that came in, employment data was still really hot, and it needs to sort of change figures basically. So Jay Powell also needs to not be so old and fuddy-duddy, because if he continues to hold rates, the markets are going to keep tanking and dying, and it's not having a great effect on overall markets and overall economy. So everything is cooling, which has been nice. Figures across the board are showing that markets are really cooling, so that is going to help with the economy. So hopefully in September, when we've got those massive eclipses. Now, eclipses, we normally get a really major pullback. So, and we normally get a sort of a black swan event. But we have had a really weird market this year where on full moons we've been pulling back. So on that new moon eclipse, hopefully we get a bit of a pump. So with that being said, hopefully BTC is hanging around this area here. So if we look to my BLX chart that I've had on Twitter, this yellow directional squiggle here going sideways. So hopefully we're seeing that for the next few weeks, and that's what we'll see for like moving into September. So we've got about 4 weeks before we get into September and before we get that next FOMC meeting. So plenty of time to form this formation here, this yellow one. We don't want to see this red one. This red one goes all the way down to about 95. That's still very, very possible. But yeah, predominantly the yellow one here is what we're likely to see, especially if we do get a bounce in this region. Now we're on the 236, and ideally, just sort of moving sideways up and down is the momentum we're going to see. It's going to be like poking your eye with a stick or pulling your hair out this month. So it's going to be one of those months. So just bear with it and go with the flow, basically, because when we get these bounces, the alts are going to really bounce. When BTC bounces like 2-3%, alts will bounce like 30%. So you want to be on that. You want to be ready for those moves. Now, BTC dominance is moving beautifully. This is chart that I've shown you quite a few times since we broke down. Now we want to retest the 63.6 region. Once we get to that, then we're pulling back, and that's when alt season will have another go. So that is probably coming up to September. It's a little bit away. We're not quite there yet. USDT dominance has probably going to go to 4.68. It's just pulling back at the moment. Now the pivot on this region is 4.41. So that's our directional pivot. Holding 4.41, we'll see a bounce to 4.68. And that's going to be sort of our bounce where we're seeing that sideways momentum. So it's just going to sit in this region here. Like we're seeing with BTC, USDT dominance will do the complete opposite. So that's essentially how it works. Excuse me. The total crypto market cap has come back to the 0.5. Now, if this is a fourth wave correction, excuse me, my voice is going. If this is a fourth wave correction, it will likely be either a triangle where we're going quite sideways into the market, and hang around that sort of that 0.5. Could be a more of a triangle where we're sort of coming down into this region, trading in those pivots, and then heading up for the next light wave to complete that fifth wave by the end of the year. So I do think we're going to get a bigger run towards December. I think the last sort of quarter from September through to December, we're going to see some rate cuts. And once we've played out these triangle patterns and these fourth waves, then we should see a bounce, and a strong bounce towards the end of the year. So I don't think this bull run is over. But like we saw in 2017, we saw the bulk of that move heading into December. And then we had a black swan event at the end of that. So that's kind of what is looking like is potentially possible with this next run happening. So yeah, so bear with it. It's been a really, really, really hard bull run. So it's not been a great time out there for any trader, because it just gives us a little bit and then takes it all back. Gives us a little bit and then takes it all back. So hopefully towards the end of the year, we'll be able to, stack some profits up and see that run through to the end of December. Total crypto market cap is showing the same, is holding the pivot at 1.4 trillion. So that was our directional pivot. It's still a directional pivot the opposite way around. So we want to see a pattern forming in this region where we've got that triangle before we head up, and then we head up like this. And that's what we want to see for the end of the year. So this period here for August, we're sort of sideways forever, and then we're continuing up. This is total 2. So the DXY has hit a directional pivot and pull back. So it's hit it perfectly, actually, 100.34, and pull back. So likely it's going to see a bit of a bounce through that directional pivot for August, showing a bit of a consolidation here, and then here coming to the next one at 104. That's where we're going to have our final low for BTC, and then this is heading down for the end of the year. So that's our fourth wave for the DXY, coming up maybe to 104.3 and then pulling back. So at the moment, just sort of hanging sideways for a little bit with BTC as we consolidate. So yeah, it's a kind of a up, down, up, down, up, down sort of pattern at the moment, just catching those lows and sort of, yeah, struggling with the market for all of you guys. I'm seeing like all the comments on X and on YouTube from a lot of people that they're really having a hard time. So Zordas, I've just saw your comment. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's worse than the COVID one. So when it's not COVID, because I had a test, I had a blood test and everything. So I hope you're feeling better as well too. There's one going around apparently, on planes and getting pretty bad in Europe at the moment, even though it's summer over there. So hopefully it calms down, that flu. But yeah, so sideways forever for August, looking for that bounce for September with that rate cut, looking for the DXY to pull back in September and give us some relief. And for ETH, I do think we're seeing 3,100. Don't shoot the messenger. I know you guys all want ETH to go up, but I think, we're going to see a small bounce here at the moment. Now, if we don't, our pivot in this region is sitting at about 3,694. So that's our directional pivot for ETH. No breakthrough there. We'll see that 3,100. So that's kind of what it's looking for. Now, I'm going to jump straight into some alts. Solana, I've got a buy zone here of 152 to 145. I still think it's got one more wave down before it even sees a retest up to these regions. So possible direction gets to the 200 MA and comes down. Other possible direction gets to the resistance point and comes down, and then that's when we start taking off. As you can see, we've got a little bit of time left in these charts for it to have a couple of small bounces where we're getting, some nice percentages, especially for those leverage traders. So we're still getting sort of 9 to 10% profits in these regions. That's still possible. And once we get to this 152, 145, that's a strong buy for me on Solana. So another one to look at was ADA, similar pattern. It's got a small bounce up and then coming back down to about 58. That's a strong support in this region. Now, ADA does like to occasionally poke its nose through the support, so just be careful not to put stop losses too close to these regions, because if we take it back to each and every time, it has dropped a little bit more. So just be aware of that. Still lots of room on the RSI for ADA to move either direction. It's sitting quite neutral. This clanker was a request from X, which this is the most sideways forever. I opened it on a daily chart when I first looked at it, and I was just like, wow, okay, that's the most sideways forever chart I've seen for quite some time. It is holding above the 100 and 200 MAs. So if we drop that back down to the 4 hourly, same situation. It is getting quite some consolidation in that region and just hugging those MAs. So that's not a bad sign. It is showing a little bit of strength with that region. Does need some more volume. even though it's had high sell volume, it must have been matched with quite high buy volume. So there's not a lot of momentum in this region. So that's another strong sign that this is going to move as well. Chart is very, very, very new. I'm sure there's data on one of the dexes that show a lot more data, but potentially if we're looking at support levels, and it's only had like 2, maybe 3 tests to this region, likely a 4th test. So that could be down to 28 to 29, one more test down, and then continuation. So, but really sideways. One that's doing really well at the moment is CVX. So it's come down, it's bounced on the 618. Now this might be done. So this chart might be like complete. And if it's complete, it's going to push past this 200 MA and continue up. So what the pattern may look like here is a bounce back down on that 200 and then coming up to this. That is the worst squiggle ever, but you get the idea. Coming up to that region and then retesting the high. So not breaking that 200 MA may see one last decline down, maybe to the 786. So, and that would be in line with what we're seeing across the board with alts, with one more wave down. Now I've got Robert would like to see XLM. So let's bring that chart up for him. Excuse me. Okay, XLM has had a strong bounce. Now, at the moment, XLM, any pullback, I'm going to put a directional pivot on that. So this was a signal inside getting started in crypto. As you can see, hit all targets, lovely. Now, directional pivot on this one is 3389. XLM needs to hold this for this to remain a bullish pattern, being as this would be our wave 1, this would be our wave 2, wave 3, currently in a wave 4, and then continuation for a wave 5. So essentially that is what we're looking for in our bullish pattern for XLM, and a continuation up at the moment. Let me take those off and I'll put that pivot back on so it's a cleaner chart so you can see. Now, if we're looking at pullbacks on this wave only, we've come back down to the 0.5. That's a really nice pullback for a 4th wave, and potentially the 618 is the next level down on this pivot. But 0.5 is a really nice pullback and could be complete. So some of these alts might be going into a B wave at the moment. So what that might look like is that triangle pattern again that I showed you on the other chart earlier. So basically A, B, C, D. We normally buy the C because we don't always get the D and the E. So potentially that is what we're seeing for a triangle pattern. It can go a little bit more, but this is what we're seeing with BTC, this sideways forever pattern, and how it's potentially going to go for a lot of the alts at the moment. But there's some good profits to be made within these regions, and if we start to build some resistances like that's a 40% bounce. And that's what I was saying with BTC. If we do get those bounces with BTC, let's go back to this chart here, and we're seeing these bounces on the weeklies where we're getting a bit of a run, we're getting a bit of a pullback. So if BTC moves in those regions, and we're getting sort of a 7% with BTC. With alts, we're going to get a 30 to a 70%. And that's the run that we're going to see across the board with those charts. So you know, it's not a bad thing that we're going sideways. It's just a consolidation period and just about catching those bounces and knowing where they are. So that's kind of what we're seeing at the moment. XLM does look like it's about to have a pullback and retest that 0.5 as well. And like I have Theta, BCH, and Sushi, and I'll get to those, and then I think we'll be done. If anyone else has something that they would like to see, please let me know now or forever hold your peace. So let's open Theta. Okay, let's see if we did. Okay, we got our ABC, and then we kept going and going and going for Theta. It's gone down, 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 down. Okay. Not a very awesome looking chart, but we did get that ABC. Then we got A, B, C again. So this is what a WXY pattern looks like. It just goes forever and ever and ever and ever down and is just ugly. 2, 3, 4. Okay. So basically, this is our W, our X, and our Y. So any pullback, Theta needs to hold the low. It needs to hold 5.7 for this to even be valid or even remotely bullish. It's probably one of the uglier charts that I've seen. Doesn't mean that it's impossible for it to move. If this was a wave 1, we need to get to this 0.5, which is 1.47. Ideally, the pivot here, directional pivot, is way up at the 618. So we'd need to get to the 786 on the next waves up. So let's assume that this is a wave 1. We've come back. We're going to hold the low at that 5.9. We want to come up and hit this 618, this directional pivot, come back down, and then head up. I don't think it's going to break the high. Stranger things have happened, but I don't think it's going to break the high on this next wave up. It still is looking quite slow. So yeah, so that's that. Potentially longer term, there's a nice sort of cup forming if that does form, but is looking quite sort of a lot of sell pressure on Theta. So not a favorite at the moment. Okay, let's head into BCH. Okay, BCH is just sort of in this upward sort of really like channel by the looks of it. Hang on, let's see if I can get a channel sort of image on this and see how we are. Yeah, upwards channel. So I would say potentially a retest to this if we hold this channel and continue to do so. This is a really good sign for BCH. 509 is the channel support. I'll put a pivot on that. And ideally where it would like to hold. So 510, 509. Has broken through directional pivots, which is nice. So our directional pivot on this was way down at 392, and the next one up at this region was about 510. So ideally we want to hold those regions, but it does look like BCH is going to break through that region. Now I'm going to go up to the daily just to get a sort of a bigger picture. So this BCH looks like it's actually one step ahead of the rest of the market. So when we're looking at those patterns where we're going sideways, this is what I'm talking about. So this looks like a very strong ABC, could be a D coming into maybe an E, a shallow E wave sitting sort of around this 100 MA, which is potentially sitting at the 400s. Now, that's if we get a larger pullback across the board. Ideally, we'd like to hold this channel support and then continue up into these ranges. But this is the pattern that I've been showing you. So BCH is one step ahead of the game by the looks of it. So not looking too bad out there. And one last request. I have sushi. Okay. Now, last time we looked at it, we had a directional pivot here of 872. So this was about a month ago on the charts here, hugging the MAs, which is a really strong sign. These look like we're going to get across. So potentially for sushi, we're seeing a bounce here, sort of heading into like that directional sideways that we're seeing across the board. Before heading up to 2.09. Now, that's our potential for shorter term for sushi. So if we do get a stronger bounce here, and that's in line with that sort of, that's actually a nice movement for sushi coming up. So about 200%. So unless they've got some news coming, some sort of release happening, that is the potential of that movement. So, and that's in the chart. So this is one that is worth taking a gamble on, in my opinion. Now, moving the other way is not ideal for sushi, because if there's no break of this 0.05, which is at 1.26, the other way we are going is we've got that squiggly momentum coming to here. We have a rejection at that region, and then we're heading down, and it will potentially look something like Theta did. And that's a pretty ugly pattern. So we can see we got this extended correction. So ideally, that's not what we want. We want this news to be released at this point, and we get this bounce to the 2.09. And so that's potentially what's going to happen. So this news is happening potentially in September. So that's essentially when our run is going to happen for BTC as well. So with those eclipses and sort of stuff happening externally. So there's a bit of woo-woo happening, I think, for BTC over the next coming month. And so jumping back to BTC, for anyone who joined us late, there's quite a few people that have jumped on. We broke down our 1. So more than likely heading to 2. Now we're at a directional pivot at 115. So no break on that directional pivot. Likely we're going down to 110. If this directional pivot breaks, then we will see 118. So we're sitting right in the middle of everything at the moment. So just be ultra careful with how you trade here and now, and keep those stop losses tight, because if BTC decides to go to 110, it takes the alts with it. But I really do think we're seeing this yellow pattern happening. So, and we'll get some nice 7% moves, which means alts will see 30 to 70% bounces. So that's going to be a good thing as well. So I've managed to get through 30 minutes of hardly any voice, a few coughs along the way, and still alive. So thank you for joining me, and I'll try and get the camera working next week. And yeah, you can catch me on X. You can request charts in Getting Started in Crypto. If you've got any questions, please reach out. I'm always around. So thanks again, guys, for watching, and I will catch you all next week.